On July 25th, 2023, Steelwool Studios released Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin. This game was the DLC to Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, which had been released a while ago on December 16th, 2021. While Security Breach was a fairly poorly received game with lots of flaws, Ruin had a much more positive reception within the FNaF community, to the point where some people regard it as their favorite FNaF game of all time. However, after Ruin's release, a lot of people expected the FNaF series to have its next big game take place after Ruin, and sort of follow up on the game's story. However, Steelwool instead took the complete opposite approach, and made the next main FNaF game take place before the events of Ruin, giving us insight into what happened leading up to the game. Now, despite Help Wanted 2 being 7 months old at this point, we still have no idea as to when the next mainline FNaF game will release, what it'll be about, and more specifically, whether or not it will take place before or after Ruin. Fortunately, Steelwool Studios is going to be appearing at PAX West this September, so we'll probably get some announcements about the next main FNaF game then. But after Help Wanted 2 came and went, we were kind of just left to speculate about where the next main FNaF game would take us. And one game in particular gave us a pretty fun and refreshing interpretation of where FNaF's story would go next. And that game is FNaF Ruin 2 Mimic Adventures. Mimic Adventures is a FNaF fan game where you, as the Mimic from Ruin, need to traverse the Pizzaplex in a series of platformer levels in order to escape. This game was made by Eddie on GameJolt, and was actually released pretty recently as of writing this, with big FNaF tubers such as Dalko making videos on it. So today, I'm going to be reviewing this game, and I'm going to be splitting up this review into 3 sections: gameplay, story, and visuals. I'm going to be going level by level for each category, showing how each of the 3 evolve over time. With all the intro stuff out of the way, let's start with the gameplay. The first level of this game takes place in the sinkhole under Roxy Raceway from Security Breach, and acts as sort of a tutorial level to showcase the game's basic mechanics. In terms of actual, platforming, it's all pretty basic because, again, this is meant to be the tutorial level. You have stuff like jumping, wall hanging, all the basic stuff. In terms of mechanics, there are spikes around the map that you have to dodge, tires that give you a higher jump, and these little mushroom dudes who are, at least functionally, the same as the Goombas from Super Mario, with you being able to jump on their heads to kill them. These mechanics work fine for being a tutorial level, but they are pretty basic. While we're still in the tutorial, I should probably explain how lives in this game work. See, there's 2 health systems in this game, being hearts and lives. Hearts can be found around the different levels, and you can only have 3 at a time. If you lose 3 hearts, you lose 1 life. Speaking of lives, these can also be found around the levels, but they are way less common than hearts. If you lose all of your lives, you're given a game over. There's also save stations around the map, which save your progress throughout the levels. However, if you get a game over, you will be sent back to the start of the level, regardless of where you last saved. And that's pretty much it for level 1. Dodge all of the spikes and mushrooms and climb up the elevator shaft that takes you down to the sinkhole from Roxy Raceway, and you've completed level 1. Let's move on to level 2. Level 2 takes place in the Glamrock Beauty Salon, which is located directly above the sinkhole from level 1. In terms of gameplay, this level introduces a new wave of threats to deal with, while keeping some of the threats from level 1 such as the spikes. Something I feel like I should also mention is that if you are damaged in this game by anything, whether it be a spike, mushroom, or whatever, you are immediately sent flying up into the air. This can be used to your advantage in certain parts of the game, but it also means that getting hit by one thing can cause you to hit a bunch of other things and lose a life if you aren't careful. Also, the Mimic lets out a blood-curdling scream if you take damage, which really made me laugh pretty hard when I was first playing. Anyways, this level's new mechanics are these flaming tires, which you can only pass through when they aren't flaming, creating a small little challenge. There's also the Nightmarian Staff Bots from Security Breach, which will drive around the level on go-karts and can damage you if they hit you. These guys can also be squashed like the mushrooms from level 1, and make revving noises when they're about to be near you. There's also this little plush trap head icon, which you can walk up to play fun with plush trap from FNaF 4, which gives you 6 extra lives if you win, and nothing if you lose. This is kinda lame since it's just the same minigame from FNaF 4, but it's a fun little inclusion, so I like it. In addition to these new mechanics, the platforming gets a bit more difficult, which makes sense and happens in most platformers. The game also starts leaving lives and extra hearts in secret places around the map, encouraging exploration, which is pretty cool. Now, let's move on to Level 3. Level 3 of this game takes place in Roxy Raceway, introducing new gameplay mechanics, new threats, and a boss fight, but we'll get there when we get there. Anyways, this level's new threat are these flaming tires. These guys can damage you if they hit you, and will bounce off the walls in the environment before eventually disappearing after a while. These guys can be pretty tough as you have to time when you walk under them, or risk getting hit. This level also introduces a new mechanic, where you can slide down a wall, then jump further than usual. I'm gonna be honest, even after playing this game for multiple hours, I still don't understand how to do this. I'm pretty sure you just have to wait a second before sliding and jumping, but I honestly don't know. Anyways, do you remember what I said about damaging yourself and how it can actually be helpful in certain situations? Well, this level has one of those. See, there's a life in this level that can't be reached by normally jumping, but if you touch the nearby spikes, you can gain a jump boost that lets you grab the life. Stuff like this is pretty cool in my opinion, and shows how creative this game can be sometimes. In terms of returning enemies, there's still plenty of spikes to dodge, and the Nightmarian staff bots occasionally show up as well. As a climactic end to this level, we're introduced to the game's first boss fight, with Ruined Roxy. Roxy has 2 phases that she switches between throughout her fight. Phase 1 is where she'll throw TNT at you, while also stomping on the ground, causing bigger and bigger tires to spawn. Phase 2 has Roxy driving her go-kart around, with your goal being to jump on her. After jumping on Roxy enough times, you'll be thrown into a short sequence where you and Roxy are driving go-karts, and you have to hit Roxy's cart with your own. While trying to do this, Roxy will throw more flaming tires at you. Hitting her enough times ends her boss fight, and allows you to move on to Level 4, Phaser Blast. As I just said, Level 4 takes place in Phaser Blast, which makes sense as the location is right next to Roxy Raceway in the Pizzaplex. In terms of new mechanics, we have these alien staff bot guys, who are actually unused models for the alien bots from Phaser Blast and Security Breach. These guys will try to shoot you with laser guns if they see you, and are pretty easy to deal with. There's also these little jump pads, which allow you to jump higher when standing on them, as indicated by a trail of blue smoke. Finally, we have bombs. Okay, let me explain. So, around the map, there are walls that block you from progressing, with the only way to break them being to grab a bomb from a nearby bomb dispenser and throw it at the wall. Bombs can also be used to damage enemies, however they can also damage you. This level does a good job of combining its new mechanics, such as having to use a jump pad to reach a wall to place a bomb next to, or having to use bombs to break a wall directly above a jump pad. Moving over to the second half of this level, we're introduced to these little shooty turret things, which remind me a lot of the ones from Freddy in Space 2. And also the Nightmarian staff bots are still here for some reason. The level then ends with a boss fight against Ruined Glamrock Freddy, where you have to throw bombs into his stomach hatch to damage him as he moves around the level. You also have to be careful when being near Freddy, as he can swallow you into his stomach hatch, which is an insta-kill. Anyways, beating Freddy allows us to move on to Level 5. Level 5 takes place in Chica's Bakery, which was a completely useless location in Security Breach unless you wanted collectibles. However, you were forced to go here in Ruin, so that's nice. Anyways, for new mechanics, we now have the ability to talk to endos around the map, which can open certain doors for you if you tell them to follow you. We also have the mini music band from Security Breach, which can appear in either large clusters around the map, or individually. There's actually a chase scene with these guys at the end of the level, which is actually pretty intense as you have to dodge all of the obstacles around the map, while also running away from the mini music men. The flaming things also return in this level, but thankfully there's no more Nightmarian bots. After beating this level, we move on to Level 6, the server room. Surprisingly, level 6 only introduces one new threat to deal with, being these laser beams around the map that can damage you. Besides that, we just have a lot of returning mechanics, such as the endos, the mini music men, and the alien bots from Phaser Blast. The endo mechanic does get a bit more complicated though, so that's nice. Beating this level brings you to the Ruined Chica boss fight, where Chica sprints from side to side while occasionally launching flaming pizzas at you. She'll also occasionally dive bomb at you, which releases a bunch of flaming pizzas as well. Your goal is to just stomp on Chica's head until she dies. This boss fight is probably the weakest one so far, although it's also pretty easy, so at least there's that. Beating Chica's boss fight immediately brings you to another fight, that being against Mexis from Ruin. Mexis has 3 different attacks, shooting a bunch of balls at you, firing laser beams around the arena, and occasionally running across the screen. After a little bit, a QuickTime event will happen, where you need to press E at the right time to avoid Mexis damaging you. This leads to phase 2 of the fight, where Mexis' attacks are a lot stronger, and there's way more QuickTime events. This is probably the best boss fight in the game so far, featuring a wide variety of mechanics, and awesome cutscenes for the QuickTime events. Beating this fight allows you to move on to level 7, Monty Golf. We enter Monty Golf to find that the entire attraction is flooded, which we'll talk about more in the story section. Anyways, this means that we have to swim through this whole level, which provides an interesting change-up and makes for some fun challenges across the level. We have 2 new mechanics for this section as well: Sea Mines and Sea Bonnies. Sea Mines are fairly straightforward. They sit in the water and explode and damage you if you get too close. Sea Bonnies, on the other hand, will travel in large packs in set directions, and will damage you if you go near them. These mechanics are pretty good, and when coupled with returning threats like spikes and returning mechanics like endos, make for a pretty fun level. During the second half of this level, we can find a sign that was apparently written by Monty, implying that he's down here somewhere. But surely he's not here right now, right? Right? Beating this level takes you to Ruin Monty's boss fight, where you have to lure him into the sea mines that are scattered throughout the arena. This fight is pretty cool, but the real fun happens after defeating Monty. Your goal here is to run away from Monty while dodging all the sea mines and sea bodies throughout the map in a giant chase sequence, which is really fun. At the end of the chase, Monty is crushed by a pile of rubble, and you move on. All 3 of these segments are extremely cool, as getting to see Monty act more like an actual gator is really interesting. Plus, it was also the approach Steelwool took for Ruin, which was pretty cool. Now, let's move on to level 8. Level 8 of this game takes place in the Superstar Daycare, and features 1 new mechanic as well as 2 reskinned versions of existing ones. The new mechanic are these ball pits, which essentially just act as portals that take you from one place to another. These are pretty cool, and are also extremely satisfying to use in certain areas. The 2 reskin mechanics are these saw blades, which are just the spikes from earlier, which also appear in this level for some reason, and these balls that just act as the same as the tires from earlier. I'm glad that the dev at least tried to give us different versions of these mechanics, as they're pretty essential for platformers but don't really mix with the visuals of this level. Anyways, after a lot of progressing, the Mimic accidentally steps on a light bulb, which makes the entire level go dark. Your mission from here is to go through the rest of the level clicking on buttons to reactivate the lights. Each time you press one of these buttons, you can hear the daycare attendant scream. Although I don't know if this means he's supposed to be present in this level or if it's just a fun little detail. Anyways, after going through some extremely satisfying and difficult sections, we're brought to Moon's boss fight and just kidding, Glitchtrap kills him immediately. We're then thrown into a chase scene with Glitchtrap, where we have to run away from him while dodging obstacles and using endos to open doors. This is pretty much just the Monty chase but without water physics, but it's still pretty fun. Beating this brings you to Glitchtrap's boss fight, where you have to stomp on Glitchtrap's head as he sporadically moves around the level, while also occasionally dealing with other random things like Springtrap holograms or this knife thing. Yeah, I don't know either. This fight is okay, but I feel like Glitchtrap's moveset could be a bit more tied to his character rather than just a bunch of random things, but whatever. Beating Glitchtrap allows us to move on to level 9, so let's talk about it. Level 9 takes place in the main lobby of the Pizzaplex, and is also extremely short. as this is meant to just be a quick little mini level to wrap up the game. We finish the level, walk through the main doors, and escape the Pizzaplex. But we are not done yet. We still have one more level and one more boss fight left, so let's do this. Level 10 takes place in... well, to be honest, I don't really know. We'll talk about it more in the story section. Anyways, Level 10 has no new mechanics, and is instead just a combination of everything we've already seen, which makes for a great final send-off to this game. Beating this level grants us access to the game's final boss, the Blob. Just like the previous level, the Blob's fight is just a combination of other level gimmicks, with the occasional new inclusion, like spikes that shoot up out of the ground, or the Blob sending out a gust of wind. Stomp on the Blob's head enough times, kill him, and roll credits. Overall, Mimic Adventures has some pretty solid gameplay for a platformer, with a wide variety of obstacles, enemies, and mechanics that work together to create a sometimes frustrating yet satisfying set of levels. But we're still far from done, as that was just the gameplay section. We still have to talk about the game's story and visuals, so let's get to it. This game opens with a cutscene detailing the events of Security Breach Ruin, as well as adding a bit of its own take on the FNaF story. For example, these cutscenes confirm that, in this universe, Gregory is related to William Afton and Cassie is related to Henry Emily. However, these cutscenes do state that the information isn't canon, which is nice. The game then immediately drops us into Level 1, where all that really happens is the Mimic escapes the sinkhole. After beating Level 1, we're brought to a news segment called Pizzaplex TV. These news segments happen at the end of most levels, and are the main source of story for this game. Anyways, this broadcast warns us about the Nightmarian staff bots in Level 2, as well as saying that Roxanne Wolf, who was able to escape the sinkhole, warned all of the other Pizzaplex residents about the Mimic, which is neat. Also, the broadcast is sponsored by Screws, Bolts, and Hairpins, which I'm pretty sure is such a location reference that I'm the only one who got. Anyways, after finishing Level 2 and killing Roxy, at least I think we kill Roxy, I don't know, she seems pretty dead to me, we're brought to another news segment, talking about how ruined Glamrock Freddy has been terrorizing everyone in Fazerblast, and that the alien bots have been deployed there to deal with him. Also, Glamrock Freddy is referred to as the Beast in this game, which is pretty funny, not gonna lie. Anyways, during Level 3, we're actually given an explanation as to why we have bombs for some reason through a sign in the level. The sign basically says that the endos in charge of cleaning up Fazerblast were given bombs to make cleaning up the place faster, which makes sense. After beating Level 3, we're given another, much shorter news segment, thanking the Mimic for killing ruined Glamrock Freddy, and saying that a party is being hosted in the bakery, which I'm assuming is why we go there next. After the bakery, we enter the server room, which, by the way, I'm not sure why we enter the server room, since it looks like this and we're not wearing a mask, but whatever, this level plus the 2 boss fights are still cool. We're then brought to another news segment, where we're told that everyone who went to the party at the bakery got sick and started hallucinating because they drank Remnant. Which is funny to me because it implies that Remnant is just another drink that the bots around the Pizzaplex have in this universe. Which would also probably imply that the Pizzaplex sold canned Remnant in this universe, which is even funnier. We're also told that Monty's Gator Gulf has been flooded, which is why we have to swim through it in the actual level. We're also told that Monty was the one who placed the sea mines around Monty Gulf in order to get rid of the sea bonnies. Also, Pizzaplex TV is going bankrupt, truly a sad day for Pizzaplex TV. Anyways, during Level 7, we can find a sign with a message from Monty, saying that whoever dropped all of the mines should be fired. I don't know if this is meant to be a Monty is dumb joke, or if this is an actual continuity error, but either way it's kind of funny. After beating Level 7 and escaping Monty, we're brought to the final Pizzaplex TV segment, where we're told that Eclipse has revamped the Superstar Daycare to make it more family-friendly. Obviously this is meant to be a joke as the place is full of saw blades when we arrive, but you don't know that at this point in the playthrough. After completing Superstar Daycare and defeating Glitch Trap, which again makes no sense given that we're not wearing a Vanny mask and thus shouldn't be in the VR world, we go through the lobby of the Pizzaplex and escape it for good. However, in between this and the Blob level and boss, we're given a cutscene showing the Mimic laying on a beach, before being attacked by the Blob. We then kill the Blob, and get a final picture of Mimic laying on the same beach from before, while the Blob is in pieces on the ground. The end. Overall, Mimic Adventures has a very simple, yet compelling and comedic story, with said story being mostly about what happened to the Pizzaplex after Ruin, and showing how the animatronics have been doing since Cassie showed up. It's fun, it's silly, it's goofy, nothing's too serious. Honestly, the perfect direction for a game like this to take with its story. Now, let's wrap up this review and talk about the game's visuals. I think a good place to start for this game's visuals would be the character models, which are all just ripped directly from Ruin. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, I just prefer it when fan games have original animatronic models instead of just using ones from the games. That being said, I absolutely love Ruin's models. Each one is a work of art in my opinion, and Steelwool absolutely cooked with these designs. Moving on to the actual levels of this game though, things don't look too great. I mean, you know we're in for some bad visuals when the credits literally say that most textures are from Google or stock websites. That being said, from what I can tell, this is the devs' first attempt at a serious game. They've had other projects in the past, but they're pretty much all just joke games. So while the textures in the majority of the levels aren't too great, I can mostly excuse it for being the devs' first real project. And by the way, I don't even think all of the levels look bad either. Levels like the server room or daycare look pretty cool in my opinion, and have an interesting and unique visual design. I just think that most of the levels are pretty boring and interesting in terms of visuals, especially when even things like the tires or mushrooms are clearly just stock assets. The cutscenes in this game are also really well animated, which just makes me even more confused as to why the main levels look the way they do. Overall, the visuals of Mimic Adventures are a bit of a mixed bag, but I still think that even the less visually appealing levels have a certain charm to them, even if they don't look that great. Overall, FNaF Ruin 2 Mimic Adventures is a pretty awesome game, with fun and challenging gameplay, a goofy and easy to digest story, and charming visuals. The game is also just insanely refreshing for the FNaF fangame scene, as most fangames are just generic office games with slightly tweaked mechanics. I'm very interested to see what the dev of this game is going to be cooking up later down the line, and I'll definitely make sure to follow up on what they're doing. Anyways, thanks for watching, I'm Supersonic, and I'll see you all next time.